Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Woody Adjacent, our podcast series where we're going to be talking about other films other than Woody Allen on this retrospective. I know it's a weird gambit we're taking, but as I mentioned on our original recording, my film taste has definitely been influenced by Woody Allen, and my whole film collection is kind of a testament to Woody Allen's directing, writing, and I want to honor a lot of screenwriters, actors, and I want to recommend and discuss some of the films in that vein. And also, I wanted to get a co-host who would do the same with me, recommend some films that he wants to have that discussion with me. And last time, we introduced him as Mr. James Walsh, and we spoke about a movie called I Love You, Daddy. James, welcome back to the recording.
It is nice to be back and not talking about I Love You, Daddy.
Guys, if you're watching this on YouTube and you missed that discussion, click on the top right-hand corner of the iCard and you can go back and listen to that discussion. I think we were pretty fair. It's a notorious movie for a reason. And to be honest with you, it was a cathartic discussion because I'm glad I got that off my chest. And I'm even more glad that Woody Allen didn't direct, write, or star in that movie. So yeah.
Oh, no. I got nothing left to say about I Love You, Daddy.
So let's move on. So I picked our next film to discuss, a film that was made in 2012, a film called Liberal Arts. You guys can see it in the title. And I got James to watch it. This is another one I want to discuss for many reasons. And one of the first questions I want to ask is, why did I pick this movie as part of the Woody Allen, Woody Adjacent project? I see a lot of things about this movie that I've seen in two of Woody Allen's best films that are really highly acclaimed, Annie Hall and Manhattan, that I want to dissect. But I also want to talk about how I feel Woody's hand would have maybe even elevated this film a little bit more. But I want to get James's opinion, and then we'll discuss what the movie is about for those who've never seen it and might think about watching it and might even disagree with us. So I'm throwing the mic over to you, James. What did you think of Liberal Arts, and what are your initial impressions before we dig deeper?
Well, I was watching it. I got about half hour into it, and I did think, why this movie? It didn't feel like a Woody Allen movie, and then something occurred to me as I was watching it, which is there's a word I've used in reviews I've done for Woody Allen movies, pretentious.
Mm-hmm.
But I will always say that when I use that word in a Woody Allen review, that sometimes I like a little bit of pretension. Sometimes I like people who are having loftier, heavier discussions about things. And that was what was happening in this movie, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working for me the way that it would in a Woody Allen movie. And what I think I finally came up with is that Woody always says that the perception of him as an intellectual is wrong. That he doesn't consider himself that. He'd rather be sitting at home watching the basketball game than going to the opera or, going to the museum or something like that. And I think that there's like a down-to-earth quality about when he engages in something like a little bit more pretentious that he brings to it, that in this one, for me at least, felt like people having conversations that they thought were way more important than they actually were. So it wasn't a bad movie, and especially I think like the last half hour started working for me, but it did feel like somebody who had seen a lot of Woody Allen movies in college or in film school, and they were remembering this time that they sort of idealize and wanted to make a movie like that, but they did it with a lot more romanticism than Woody would have done. I mean, we'll get deeper into it, but yeah, it felt like if Woody made this movie, it wouldn't. I mean, the closest I could think of to an equivalent, at least for me, for a Woody Allen movie, would actually be Radio Days.
Okay.
because that's where Woody does have sort of a little bit of a romanticized nostalgia for a certain time, but it's more a general time. I mean, it does looks like specifically into his life, but it's more of a romanticized time in the way that the world was, as opposed to who he was during that time. And I definitely think this movie would appeal to somebody much more. I saw a review that Roger Ebert did of it, where Roger Ebert was saying how much he enjoyed it because it made him remember, there'll always be a part of me that will be in college and will be having, that moment in my life. I didn't have that moment. So maybe that's the reason it doesn't quite work for me the way that it would somebody else, because I'm just seeing a lot of people who are having these, very, very important conversations, but on their mommy and daddy's dime. And I'm watching it going, oh, that's great. When you were doing that, I was loading trucks. And
That's harsh.
So it's a little bit, I can't identify with it, in a way that some other people probably could.
And I get that, because I kind of, obviously, I've said this, I know I'm going to stereotype me typecast. Everyone always feels I'm a funny guy because, you're a black guy and you like Woody Allen movies where you got these middle to upper class white people with their very different class experience than you. How can you relate to it? And when you see how well off or pretentious they are, how does that not bother you? How can you enjoy those movies? And that's why this movie won me over for a couple of reasons. But before we delve in, just in case the listeners haven't watched this movie, I'm going to set the scene what the movie's about. So the movie is about this, let's say, mid-30-something graduate who seems to be stuck. He's a New Yorker like Woody Allen. To be honest with you, even when the movie starts, it starts off with a very similar title card to even how Woody Allen opens his movies. It's a first-person shot of him just talking to the camera. Woody Allen's done this a lot of times. I don't even think the director and actor, the main actor, whose name...
Josh Radnor,
yes. He is actually the writer and director of this. I don't think he was trying to ape Woody Allen. It's just that there's a lot of ticks you already see. New Yorker, main character, awkward main character. And he's stuck. And he seems to kind of doesn't know what he's doing with his life. He seems to be in a not so happy relationship. And he gets called back to his college by one of his old professors. And when he gets called back, he connects with a young lady that there's a big age difference between, who kind of awakens him to some things in his life or gives him a different perspective. And it's not only just him. The professor who invites him is having some issues with his career and his ageism and what he wants to do with his life. There's even another professor, a female professor, who seems to be unhappy as well. So this is a movie where there's multiple people from different aspects and perspectives and ages are stuck and questioning and unhappy. And again, I've seen this in the Woody Allen movie a lot of times, but I think the main crutch to that, that's the plot of the movie. This man, he goes back, connects with his old college, meets a girl, and there's a romance there, but there's an age difference, and his quirkiness kind of takes over, and that's the basic plot of the movie without getting into too many spoilers. The thing I liked about this movie is I think the main character and Elizabeth Olsen, the female character, they have chemistry. And when I was watching the movie, it did remind me of the kind of chemistry I saw in Annie Hall, where you get these two people that they're different, but they just click. For some reason, they click. And I will say, I felt the actors, I did feel there was a natural chemistry between the actors, even though there was an age difference that the male character was kind of fighting against, but he couldn't deny there was a connection there. And I thought that came across really well. The other characters, they're not there as much, so these two are kind of the stars of the show. But the age difference thing, there was a lot of reviews I read that were like, yeah, this is one thing we always want Woody Allen to address. We wanted to make a movie about, Manhattan isn't necessarily a movie about him falling in love with a young person per se. It's about him having relationships and having friends and the city, a lot of other things. But that relationship seems to bubble to the surface, as well as the one with him and Diane Keaton. Now here, I felt a similar vibe here, which is what I liked. But like you, James, the first time I watched this years ago, I remember it being a lot better. I think this movie doesn't age as well, and although I think their chemistry is good, it does seem like the actual plot is a bit, it feels a bit, I don't want to say forced, but it feels like the age difference and them being in front of the camera, I feel like the film wants to rush to get to them two having this quandary about them being together. And in Woody Allen movies we've seen, it feels a little bit more natural, where here they kind of cut to the chase. And even the reason he comes back a second time to meet her again, it's kind of flimsy, but I feel like the movie addressing the age thing, it was honest and funny, but I kept on thinking, this movie is good, but it just isn't what I want it. It's not how I remember it.
Yeah, I mean, this was my first time seeing it. And I think it just, first of all, I mean, I don't know how old Elizabeth Olsen was when the movie was made, but she's supposed to be 19 in it.
She was 23.
Yeah, she comes off older than her character is supposed to be. And I didn't quite understand the Jesse, the main character. I didn't understand how he was stuck. I don't think we got enough time with him before the plot kicks in to kind of really understand exactly what it is he's stuck on. I mean, he's got a job and it doesn't look like he loves it. And he reads books a lot, and his laundry gets stolen. And I'm watching it and I'm like, I'm sure that's a metaphor for something. I don't know what. And then, he gets asked to come back to his old college to be there for his favorite teacher's retirement dinner, who's, played by Richard Jenkins, who actually is, I think he's the best thing in the movie. But the Richard Jenkins part, I get that it kind of goes along with the themes of aging, but it felt a little bit like it was disconnected from everything else. Like,
yeah.
Him sort of grappling with retiring and,
changing
his mind. Yeah. And I'm watching it and I'm like, this is good. It's a very good performance, but I don't get what it has to do with everything else.
Yeah. That's what I was mean about they trying to, the screenplay has Elizabeth Olsen and Josh Radnor as the forefront, but then it does throw the professor character in there as well, but it doesn't give him enough screen time to feel the depth of his despair. So it doesn't work as well. It just feels like it's thrown in. It feels like he threw it in at the side. Josh Radnor threw it in at the side to have his perspective. I just want the older man's perspective. I want this older female's perspective, and I want the youngish lovers in the middle. So I'm hitting all cylinders. But as you said, because of that, and because it's a really good, more serious thing to develop, and it isn't cooked really well, so he ends up being a side character with a really good theme that really isn't cooked well.
And he has the one scene where he sits down with Jesse, and he talks about how, I feel like I'm 19. I've always felt like I'm 19.
What can I pause you there, because I've got the clip. I've actually got the clip for that right now.
You know how old I am?
No, how old are you?
It's none of your goddamn business. Do you know how old I feel like I am? 19. Since I was 19, I have never felt not 19. But I shave my face, and I look in the mirror, and I'm forced to say, this is not a 19-year-old staring back at me. teaching here all these years, I've had to be very clear with myself that even though I'm surrounded by 19-year-olds and I may have felt 19, I'm not 19 anymore. You follow me?
Yeah.
Nobody feels like an adult. It's the world's dirty secret.
Yeah, so I like what he's saying, and the whole movie could have been centered around that, to be honest with you. But as you said, James, he only gets a few scenes to kind of develop that.
Yeah, that scene at least felt connected to the plot. There's another scene where he goes back to try and get his position at the college back. It actually, in my opinion, might be the best scene in the movie because he's acting the hell out of it. But it didn't feel like it was connected to the rest of the movie. And I guess maybe that might be, if maybe he had cast somebody who actually was around 19. Because, you know, he's talking to Elizabeth Olsen. He's like, oh, I'm so much older than you. And I'm looking at the two of them and I go, really? Because you don't seem like you're really that much older than her. I mean,
well, actually, I want to ask you that question, James. What do you think of this film's focus on the age difference? Do you think this film did a good? Because I know that's one thing people always harp on about. I hate. All right, now we're bringing it up with Woody because it's very pertinent. Because this is a movie that tries to address an age difference, even though they look very similar in age, and in reality they kind of are as well. But the movie's playing with that theme and is trying to be very serious, very mature about how it handles that. How do you think the movie handles that? Because I think it tries, and I think it's amusing, but I'm not sure if it lands.
I don't know. It you know, there's the whole thing where he's talking about where he discovers that she's reading. I don't think it was actually Twilight.
It was,
but it was. Was it? I didn't know. They never said the title, so
they show the cover with the hand holding the apple.
Yeah, and he sees that she's reading it. You know, going, how can you read this? This is a problem with the world. Blah, blah. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, you know, there were plenty of middle-aged moms reading Twilight. There were plenty of like older, especially his. You know, he's 35. Plenty of older people who were reading Twilight at the time. So that one thing where it's supposed to be that she's supposed to be more immature or younger or anything didn't make me think that she was. It just made me go, oh, she's reading this stupid book. And I think that's where the relationship part of it kind of started to not work for me, because when he's this is supposed to be almost like their first real date.
Yeah.
And he goes on and on and on about it so much that I thought this girl would absolutely say to him, you know what, I don't want to continue doing this because you're weird and you're making way too big a deal out of this. And I don't think this is going to work. I didn't feel the connection between the two of them. I felt like they liked the same books. It actually felt like in some ways that she was exposing him to more new things than he was exposing her to.
I agree with that. I think the character came away feeling that way at the end of the movie as well, actually.
Yeah, it just, I mean, at the end of the movie, she sort of says, well, I think that I wanted to take a shortcut into adulthood, maybe by dating you. And it felt like she was, and again, it's sort of very basic college level, like, you know, I burned you a CD kind of a thing. And they're talking about books and everything, which is great. That's a great sort of way to, you know, your first date, you're talking about what you like and everything. I never got a feeling though that they were compatible outside of that. And maybe the movie doesn't think they were either, because I'll throw this out there as a little anecdote. Last year I was 39 and I went out on a date with somebody who was 23. So kind of a similar age-wise situation. And we had things in common, but in the end, when I look back, I'm glad that it didn't go any further than that, because the age difference, you know, I said to somebody afterwards, I was like, she lives half her life on social media, and I can't relate to that. I can't relate to every time I have a thought posting about it. So what they were saying about the age difference, I understood from that personal experience. But again, I just didn't feel like, I felt like she came off so much like when I watched the trailer when you mentioned the title of it last month, because I'd never even heard of it, and I thought, oh, she's supposed to be what, 25? Then the movie's, oh no, she's 19. If they hadn't have told me she was 19, I would have assumed that she was mid-20s.
Do you think they went too far with that? You just took me out of it. I can't suspend my disbelief on that. It was a bit of a push, especially as you mentioned, since she's so mature as well. It probably, like, come on. And obviously, who Elizabeth Olsen is now in pop culture,
Yeah.
it's very hard to go back and watch and I'll be like, I can't see it. I can't see this actress being 19 because she's so mature, and in real life she was over 20 as well. So I can understand why that did disrupt your suspension of disbelief. But yeah, I did buy it a little bit more than you. But let me play the clip, and I haven't got a lot of clips, guys. This isn't going to be a movie clip show, but I'm going to play this clip because there's something they discuss at the end, which is something I want people to take in mind when listening to us talking. Let me play the clip because this is the whole Twilight argument, which is, again, one of the more humorous parts of the movie.
I liked it. It was fun and stupid, and it passed the time, and it's not Tolstoy, but it's also not television, and it made me happy. How are you?
Thank you. This is the worst book ever written in English.
So there are worse books written in other languages?
Probably not, unless this book is translated into other languages.
Really? We don't need to do this.
No, please, let's. I need to know how you read these, I guess you call them sentences, close the book, and feel anything other than offended and sad.
Well, millions of people like it.
So when millions of people like something, that means it's good?
No, it means millions of people like it. These books make people happy. We don't always have to be thinking about poli-sci or reading Chaucer, which, by the way, I hated.
You're not supposed to like it.
Then why read it? You love college so much, right? Isn't it all about understanding different points of view?
It's also about developing taste.
That was snobby. You're a snob.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. You think it's cool to hate things. And it's not. It's boring. Talk about what you love and keep quiet about what you don't.
Look, I know how this sounds, but trust me, this is a big deal, okay? This country is in bad shape, and it has to do, in large part, I think, with people liking things that are very, very bad.
Right, according to you. Well, why are you the one who gets to decide what's good and bad? And do you only want to surround yourself with people who have read the same books as you?
I guess we're going to have to move on to a specific example.
You know, through doing this retrospective, you get so many people saying that, you know, the thing I like about the discussion, even outside of the movie, it's just that whole discussion about people being snobs, about being opinionated, and people saying you should watch things because of taste. And even someone said to me, you know, you're going to talk about non-Woody Allen movies in the Woody Allen podcast. It's going to kind of contaminate the quality of the discussion, of the legacy of what you're trying to do here. And even though me and you might not agree about this movie in particular, that's not the point. The point is to have film discussion and what they're trying to get across with the narrative, with the screenplay, with the actors, all the elements. This is what I love about Woody Allen's films in particular. And anyone who tries to create similar narratives, I like what they're trying to say because it's about life. And we're trying to discuss that and dissect it because it's fun, it's interesting. And if we all agreed, life would be fucking boring, as she calls him out on, which I loved. I loved that bit when she did that because I'm like, it's meta. You guys listening who thinks that, you know, we should all agree or this ain't a good movie, that's not the point, man. The point is to watch something that we have different the perspectives on, because I got a couple of things out of the movie, but I can definitely admit this movie isn't as good as I remembered. But there's another part of the movie I want to talk about, but But yeah, I like that discussion they had about being snobs, being opinionated, people from different ages, having similar tastes, but still, these two have similar tastes on some things, but they disagree wildly on other things, and he comes off as a pretentious snob about her not liking a pop culture book for whatever reason. And then it kind of wakes him up to realize, oh, actually, come to think about it, I am a bit of a prick.
Yeah. You know, if you're going to compare it to like Manhattan, where, you know, the relationship between Woody and
Mariel Hemingway's character?
Mariel Hemingway, yeah. Where he is exposing her to things. And I can't remember a scene in it where, you know, she talks about something that is of her generation and he sort of dismisses it. I don't know. Like I said, I think it's just, for me, it was just a matter of not, in that last half hour of the movie, it kind of gets away from, like, it's his romanticism about the time that he spent in college, especially after he has the little affair with the Allison Janney character.
Yes, that's what I want to get to as well. Do you keep going?
Yeah, it sort of disillusions him a little bit. It makes him sort of go, well, maybe this time in my life, you know, wasn't what I thought it was, or maybe it's, I need to grow past it, or whatever. And that's, to me, when the movie started working a little bit better. After he also, you know, she wants to sleep with him and he says no, he can't. That was a very good scene. It starts to work for me, like I said, in that last half hour. Again, it might just be for me this disconnect in that I can't relate to the experience that is being so romanticized in a way that it's funny because, you know, I'm not a Jew from New York who grew up during World War II. You know, I shouldn't be able to relate to like Woody Allen in some of his movies then, you know, by those standards, but I do. What Woody can do that is very difficult to do is I'm you know, there's a great, I think it was in the Woody Allen documentary, where they're interviewing Martin Scorsese, and he says, I love watching his movies, but even though they take place in Manhattan, where Martin Scorsese's from, he said they might as well be a different planet. And yet there's something where you relate to them and you enjoy them and you can laugh about experiences that you've never had. And this movie just couldn't do that for me. I was, especially, you know, it gets into like the Zac Efron character.
Yeah.
Who I could not stand.
The high guy. He said that's a trope. Even that kind of character, the wise, know-it-all, fairy guy. I don't mean fairy as in homosexual. I mean fairy as in he just seems magical.
He almost should have been Native American or something to complete the stereotype.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I'm looking at him and you don't really get to know him, but I'm assuming, again, he's this privileged white kid from the suburbs whose dad is like an orthodontist or something, and he thinks he's so much more wise and that everything he's saying is so profound, and it is not, but the movie kind of acts like it is.
True, yeah.
And
that's pretentious as hell.
That's pretentious as hell, yes.
Definitely.
Whereas if you get into like the other kid, I don't remember his name, but the kid who's having a harder time.
Yeah.
That was a good performance and a good little subplot where it's, again, showing that this experience that the main character is romanticizing isn't great for everybody.
That's a great, you know what, I feel so bad, and he actually forgot to bring up that character. That was a great dichotomy. And again, that's where I feel like the film was trying to be too many things to too many people, but the other people that could have taken up their own movies or really great topics, I mean, there's so little time given to them. It's kind of like, wow, you know, and that was my disappointment with the movie. I want to play the last clip because this is what you mentioned, again, with the female college professor who really gives them a dose of hard reality, which you could call it a comedic scene, but this, to me, this was the best part of the movie. I actually loved this little rant, for me, out of the whole movie.
I'm just confused. How... I mean, you're a tenured professor in one of the most prestigious English departments in the country. That's not fulfilling?
Sit through a faculty meeting at a liberal arts college, Mr. Young Person. I assure you, you will lose all faith in humanity.
Okay, but what about the classroom? There had to have been some joy there. I mean, you were such a good teacher.
Thank you. I like to teach. I used to love it.
What happened?
Life happened.
Okay, I'm gonna need a little bit more.
Well, that's all you're gonna get. Unlike you, I'm not from the let me tell you every 6 sordid detail of my life generation. I value discretion. I loathe self-pity. So let's just leave it at this. People are disappointing.
Yeah, it's just, I would think...
Don't get comfortable.
Sorry. I would just think that spending so much time with those poems would make you more, optimistic and hopeful.
Nonsense. They were miserable men who were granted a few moments of transcendence, and they had the talent and foresight to grab pen and paper and write it down. Byron was probably the happiest of the lot, only because he put his dick in everything.
This is the saddest evening of my life.
Get used to it. My advice to you is this. Put some armor around that gooey little heart of yours.
I'm going to have to give her one of these. That's what you call a nuclear bomb. Oh, she put him in his place. But I thought, again, it was a really great perspective. It was funny, it was humorous, but it was a really good perspective. And I think he needed to hear that. And I don't think she was really being mean. She was just giving her thoughts on her life experience, which I felt as a writer was really cool that he tried to do that for so many characters in one movie. But the final product didn't deliver it in a really impactful way because they just didn't have the... I don't even know if it didn't have the time. I mean, am I being nice by saying didn't have the time? I guess he didn't execute it properly. So it all came across together well.
Characters like that felt like they were not characters. They were there to serve the story and to further along the story. But like, I mean, the kid who's having a hard time and he tries to kill himself. If you'd made a movie about that kid being in Richard Jenkins' class, and Richard Jenkins is going through trying, he's going to be retiring and he's having second thoughts and he's getting older, and maybe the kid he's going through his hard time and maybe he has the affair with Allison Janney and they have that conversation. That's a better movie. When you bring in the main character and the Elizabeth Olsen character, it's two people who are not really having much problems in life. They're really not. They're having this sort of, the Jesse character is, I'm not 100% happy with my life. And the Elizabeth Olsen character is, I'm not, I feel more grown up than the boys around me. And then these other three characters are having these actual existential issues that are so much more interesting than what these two are experiencing.
But it's love, James. They're in love.
Yeah.
Not really. I'm joking. Not really.
No, and one thing that irritated me, and it's this concept of she's like, the boys around me who are, they act like they're
19,
18, 19, 20. And I'm watching it and I'm thinking, this concept of girls mature faster than boys. I'm sure there are plenty of boys at that school who, were just as intense about their education, who were maybe even the kid who's having a rough time.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah.
If you could have had her character in it and the two of them hooking up, and it just felt like this actually, to me, now that I'm thinking about it, the weakest part of the movie is the main character.
Well done. You know what? I'm going to bring it up because I was reading a lot of the reviews, because I like to get critics, just like you checked out Roger Ebert's review. I was checking out other critics' reviews and what people were saying, and the one person they came down on was the main character.
Yeah.
They were saying he has no charisma. He's just kind of a bit of a mouthpiece. He's not really interesting. And I didn't even realize that it's true. When the movie starts, you mentioned it. He gets robbed,
Uh-huh.
and even he has that monologue where it's like he's interviewing people for a class. I didn't really get it, and he kind of is the weak link. And although he wrote and directed it and stuff like that, I'm like, you know what? It is true. You are kind of the weakest character because you're kind of lost, but we don't know much about you, And drawing it back to Woody Allen, his characters are always the neurotic Woody Allen character, full of life, maybe even to an extreme, maybe even to a cartoonish degree in some circumstances, but they are oozing charisma. You can't really get enough of them. Sometimes it's just a bit too much. And in this case, when you come away from this, me coming away from this again years later, I'm kind of like, yeah, he's just soaked a lot of energy from everyone else, and he just kind of was meh. He came in kind of a nobody, wasn't an asshole per se, just a bit of a snob, a bit lost, and you don't connect with him. He's just a guy.
I remember I've heard I heard this years ago, and I didn't understand it until I got older. But one of my favorite books and one of my favorite movies is The Graduate.
I love that movie too. We should talk about that down the
line. I heard somebody say, a critic say, when you're young, you identify as Dustin Hoffman. When you're older, you identify as Mrs. Robinson. And it felt like he was the Dustin Hoffman character in The Graduate, except he's a good 10 years older or so than Dustin Hoffman was supposed to be in that movie. And it makes you think, so you graduated college and then you've done nothing with your life for the last 10 years except think about how great college was? There's the show from the 90s, Married with Children. And there's the main character who's a complete loser, and his glory days were when he played football in high school. And that's the joke. The joke is, oh, you peaked at a point in time that really didn't matter, and that that's supposed to be your launching pad into life. And at the end of the movie, that's why, like I said, it started to work for him. He meets the woman that works at the bookstore, and she's more his age, and they steal the scene from Manhattan where they go to the Brooklyn Bridge. And at least it started to seem like, okay, now this character is moving on. He's getting past being stuck in his college days. And I kind of wish that had maybe, if you had started off with him more immature, or maybe he had a girlfriend and he couldn't make it work, and you see he's got these string of failed relationships, some sort of a backstory for what had happened to him between college and now. But you don't get that. You just get him having his clothes stolen and reading books, and that's it. I guess you're supposed to fill in the blanks from that. And it just didn't work for me. And the other characters are just so, not only better, they're better characters. And, I've never seen this guy outside of How I Met Your Mother. They're better actors than him. And they're more in the scene where Elizabeth Olsen tells him to leave because, he says, I can't sleep with you. The age difference matters to me and everything. She sells that scene. And each of them, Allison Janney and Richard Jenkins, and I don't know the name of the kid who's struggling. They each have a scene where they really get to act. It just felt like, compared to everybody else, the Josh Radnor character didn't jump out at me. He didn't have a standout scene. He didn't have anything that I connected with as much as I did the others.
Josh Radnor's only real moment then was when the did have a suicide attempt in the movie,
Yeah.
and he was at the hospital with him, and that's when he tried to relay to him that point you made about him, you know, knowing what his glory days were, when he tried to relate to him that he never had any glory days, that it's all rough, and even in his current life, it ain't all sunshine and rainbows, but it ain't as bad as he thinks it is. That was his moment to shine. Do you think that worked for him at all in that scene?
It's, first of all, it's a scene that I've seen 100 times in other better things.
Harsh. You're coming down harsh.
He took an idea that I feel like I have seen in so many other movies or TV shows or books or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a good idea. This is your prologue, and then things are, you know, the story of your life hasn't even really started yet, and all this stuff. None of that is new ideas. They're all ideas that I've seen before, and it's like he didn't add anything to it. He's giving you that basic same speech that and you know, it, I don't know, they don't delve into these characters enough to know about them. Like, I don't know anything about that kid's parents, and does he not have a dad or an uncle or somebody else who could have expressed that to him?
It did feel a bit manipulated, like he had no other family, no other friends. He spoke about his mum was a single mother, she wasn't even there. Did seem a little bit contrived, like this is set up specifically to have this talk. So it was a bit like,
Yeah, I mean, and just as we're talking about it, it's like I'm writing a better story in my head, as long as you leave out the main character, and maybe you make that kid the main character. You could keep everybody else. You could keep Elizabeth Olsen and Richard Jenkins and Allison Janney, and maybe get rid of Zac Efron. But or even, you know what, the Zac Efron thing, it might have worked with that kid as the lead, but with the Jesse character, everything Zac Efron is saying, somebody who is that age, they should look at him and go, "You're an idiot.
Yeah,
you have no idea what the world is like. You're spouting off a lot of very easy answers." And the fact that instead the Jesse character is like, you know, "Oh, you're so wise," or whatever, it made me go, well, maybe you're the idiot then. I don't know if you're listening to this guy.
Yeah,
I think it's just, it was mainly him that didn't work for me until the end. I thought the stuff with him meeting the woman that worked at the bookstore and everything, I found that charming. I thought that was a nice little epilogue to the whole thing. And it might be my favorite stuff with him in it, in the movie.
That's like 10%.
If that. But
we tore this movie apart.
well, and the thing too is, you know, compared to I Love You, Daddy, this is not a bad movie.
Wow, that's a backhanded compliment if I ever heard one.
I Love You, Daddy was painful to sit through. This was more sort of, it was very slow going in the beginning. And about the middle point of the movie, it started to become, all right, this is a little bit more interesting. Because I really didn't know which way they were going to go. They could have just as easily gone with the age is only a number.
Yeah.
You know, and he and Elizabeth Olsen fall in love. Other movies have done, and Manhattan did that.
Yeah.
They could have gone that direction. So I got interested in which way they were going to go with it. I wasn't mad at the direction that they went in. Like I said, I could relate to it. I thought that it was interesting that then each of them immediately goes out and sleeps with somebody else. You know, in that way, it became a movie that I started to get invested in. So I didn't, like I said, ultimately it was fine. It didn't work for me in the way that it apparently did for people who had that experience, like Roger Ebert said, who lived that experience. Whereas, like I said, Woody Allen can make me care and make me invested in experiences that I haven't had.
Well, hold on to that thought. We're going to have the Woody Allen, what if Woody Allen did this? I just want to, let's talk about some of the other, just more the superficial aspects before we go on. Now, Josh Radnor before this, he's most known for How I Met Your Mother. He was the main actor in that. I never watched that. This was one of his first forays after that. I think he had two movies after that. One movie I think he did write as himself again, and this, in terms of writing, screenplay, and directing and camera work as a package, I think it's decent.
Yeah. Oh, it's shot really well.
Yeah, so I was actually impressed, and I didn't even know, because for some reason I didn't even look up who directed and wrote the movie until afterwards. I thought, that's not bad.
Mhm.
So I think it's pretty good for like a first, second run movie from someone who was in the television kind of base level rom-com television comedy series. I didn't even say my biggest criticism about this movie. I don't know if it's actually meant to be a comedy, because it's not really funny. And now I'm going to play the Woody Allen game. Woody Allen, how I think Woody Allen could have elevated this, how he would have made this. Now, A Rainy Day in New York, again, I don't know why. Right now on rental, it's risen up in rentals again. I saw a headline that Woody Allen's Rainy Day has gone up in rentals again. And if you go back to our discussion on YouTube, someone made a comment about, we didn't like it because the main character just seemed a little bit too pretentious. The main character was very unlikable. And I guess we was expecting something a lot better. Those are characters, again, coming out of college. They went on a little tryst in New York for different reasons. But there was good dialogue in that movie. It was shot really well. I didn't like the actors, but I like the actors here. It's kind of like, I don't even know if I wish I could kind of swap some of the ideas and hear both, because I think the cinematography and the dialogue and some of the more serious things with the characters you mentioned are interesting. And I think if Woody Allen used it would be interesting. Do you think this movie could have worked with comedy? Do you think it would have been better if it had Woody's injection of comedy with the dialogue and just more of the setting? Do you think that would have helped? Because I think it might have made this more memorable.
Yeah, it definitely was not as funny as I thought it would be. I think Woody would have stripped back a lot of the romanticism. He would have been a lot more straightforward with it. And I almost feel like the Josh Radnor character, if he had been 40 instead of 30, because I think he's supposed to be 35.
Yeah.
If he'd been 40, if he'd been
45.
Yeah, well, even just, I mean, as I can attest to currently, being 40, you realize you've about hit the halfway point. And for him, 35, I can't exactly describe what the difference is between being 35 and 40, but there's almost sort of you're in your mid 30s. Your 20s are not that far behind you. And maybe if he'd been a little bit older and been 40 and she's 19, you could have mined some. There is a funny scene where he's sitting down and he's writing, okay, when I was 16, she was, when I was 19, she was 3. When I was 16, she didn't
0.
exist. And that was, but then he starts to go, okay, well, when I'm 84, she'll be 71. That looks okay. He can live with that.
Yeah.
If there had been maybe more things that she's talking about that he doesn't understand, or bands that she likes that he's never heard of, things like that, where you could play up the age difference. And instead, it's just like you feel like he's really not that much. It just feels like he's not that much older than her. And if you'd stuck like a 40-year-old Woody Allen, like around, man, again, the Woody Allen Mariel Hemingway relationship, she looks like she's 17.
Yeah.
To the point where, it is slightly uncomfortable. They make it work. I never watch it and I think, I always look at it and I'm like, okay, I see how they complement each other. But I don't know. It just, like I said, it just didn't feel like there was much of an age difference. And you could have made it funnier when he goes off about Twilight. That's the closest you get to that. You get to that sort of obsessive thing where he can't let it go. Otherwise, it could have used a little bit more juxtaposition of their ages, what the difference is between their ages, because it didn't feel like there was one.
You know what? You're reminding me of a film. I don't know if we'll talk about this film down the line. Michael Douglas did a film in 2009 called Solitary Man, and have you ever seen that movie with Jesse Eisenberg?
No, it sounds familiar though.
All right, we might talk about that because there's themes that you've mentioned in your little bit there that I think we can discuss that might be part for a good dissection. But look, I don't want to tear this movie up anymore because we went quite much more deeper into it than I thought we would, which is fine because I really enjoyed it. I like the movie. It's not as good as I remembered. When you said the Brooklyn Bridge thing, I realized that, yeah, come on, man, you can't say he didn't hit Woody Allen from the title card, the opening. I think this is another one where I think he was trying to channel some Woody Allen here. I think it's clear. But I don't know if you agree with me, but guys...
Well, yeah, right down to that, I mean, it's the older woman that he goes to the Brooklyn Bridge with. So it's basically the Diane Keaton that he goes to the Brooklyn Bridge with.
Yeah, I think we hit the nail on the head. So I'm glad I brought this up now because that wasn't all for nothing.
Yeah.
But personally, I thought the movie was okay, and I really like the fact, again, Woody Allen is a writer, director. We do not see a writer director having the full power to make a movie, and the fact that he did, this director did, the main. Why am I keep forgetting this guy's name? Josh.
Radnor.
Josh Radnor. I keep wanting to say Josh Trank from Fantastic Four.
That would have been a different movie.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I respect what he did. I think it's a decent watch. I know it sounds like, well, I can only speak for myself. I think it's an okay movie, a really good start. He hasn't done much since then, so this could have been the start of like a build up and an improvement, but not so much. He did do one movie before this. I think it said Thank You something. I heard that was good as well. Who knows? We might talk about that down the line. But no, James, I appreciate you taking my second pick. You're going to be up next because I'm really interested to talk about what you got next. And actually, I think we're going to make it a tradition now to actually announce the next film we're going to discuss, just in case people want to watch it, get ahead of it, and, they can watch it and hear our discussion and agree with us or disagree with us while they're listening. So what's the next film we're going to be discussing?
The next film is going to be the 2000 Edward Norton directed Keeping the Faith with him and Ben Stiller and Jenna Elfman.
Oh, I can't believe that Ben Stiller and Edward Norton did a movie together. Whew. That's a definite. And you know what? I actually saw there was a Blu-ray re-release of this as well. So, which I have. So I'm looking forward to watching this again. Guys, have you watched this movie? Liberal arts, what are your thoughts on it? On Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, very favorable. This is a fresh tomato, above 50%, and the reviews are scaling towards positive. So people really did enjoy it, but people who didn't like it do say they think it's pretentious and a bit forceful and contrived. So yeah, I mean, make up your own minds. I would say check it out. And let us know what you think. Leave a comment in the comment section down below, whether you're on YouTube or the podcast link. We really appreciate the listeners. We got our eye, speaking about Woody Allen news, as I said, Rainy Day in New York is doing well on streaming again. I'm not sure how much of Woody Allen's collections on iTunes to download or even Netflix. I don't know. Amazon probably took their stuff off because of the court case. But yeah, I guess people want Woody Allen and they're waiting for Rifkin's Festival. So there's no release date on that. So I can't say when we're going to be discussing that in future. But we definitely got our eye on the ball to discuss that when it comes out. So stay tuned for that. But James, let the people know where they can find you, where they can reach you, and how they can get in contact if they want to.
You can always find me over at manic-expression.com, and my books are available to purchase on Amazon.
As always, those links will be in the description. You can catch us at Planet Tyrol. And again, this is part of the Woody Allen retrospective, WoodyAllenAdjacent. We had a list from you guys over at Reddit for all the films you wanted us to discuss. This was one of them as well, because a lot of you did feel like this was aping Woody Allen a little bit. So tick this one off the list. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one, which will be coming that'll be our last movie for 2020. But yeah, well, we're gonna start 2021 with one of my favorite movies of all time. But I will leave you in suspense for that. But James, thanks for being on, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.